bypassed Dr. Linda Flower, Dr. Amy Pink, and Daphne Tan to join me up here at the front of the room, and we can have a little brief discussion. Brief for me is hard, as I told you at the beginning, but when I have a time crunch, it makes it a lot easier. Sorry. Apologies that Jeffrey Smith is unable to make it today, so we're going to kick this off without him, unfortunately, and some other things that came up. So, although our time is short, I want to give everyone an opportunity to say a couple of words. We heard a lot today across the day about differences, different approaches, differences in culture, differences in biology, differences in as well as similarities in all of these areas. We heard a lot also about how do we move forward food and the future of food. How can we do that from an education point? How can we do it from improving food products, a sensory innovation point? And I think that what I'd like to sort of hear from all of you is in the time that we have, what would you say from your different perspectives, product development in social and consumer science and in educating about science and nudging children and things towards new proteins. What would you say from your perspectives and from listening today really are the key points that you've taken out of today that are going to help shape what the future of food looks like, both here in Singapore, but also more globally across the world? So maybe, Linda, would you like to start?
So it's clear that we can't continue with the current food system that we have. We have to make some dramatic changes. And I think a lot of the acceptance of new foods comes from the way that you position it. I think it was Daphne who had said, the man said he was very familiar and this was terrible, but if you say it was all plant-based, then it was yummy. So I think the way that we set the expectation is going to be critical in accepting a new paradigm. We can't stick with the same paradigm. It's not sustainable. So there has to be a shift in how we position it. I think we made a mistake with positioning the plant-based meat substitutes by calling them meat substitutes. We should have just said, here is a plant-based protein and it's really yummy, and never put into anyone's head that it's supposed to taste like chicken, because it doesn't taste like chicken, or it's supposed to taste like a hamburger. It doesn't taste like a hamburger, but many of the things could be very delicious. So I think overall, setting the right expectation is going to be critical for success.
I think I agree in terms of the alternative proteins or novel proteins that might have been a mistake in making a category of itself. Like, it should be a standalone category. I'm going to take something from Kerry, who mentioned the other day in terms of complementary proteins. You add, I don't know if it was your idea or someone else's idea, but I'm bringing up now anyway in terms of these that can be additional things to a diet for help in terms of health or protein intake, etc. And I think you can take that from children in terms of they just want it to be tasty. So whilst their parents might be more concerned about health, from a child's perspective, taste is the main driver. But also in terms of some of these new foods, they like that it's good for the planet because they can see the perspective in the future this is something for them. So I think in terms of making things that are tasty and then using the planetary benefits for children is a good way of like educating them and then using them going forward as well.
Couldn't agree more.
Don't understand a little bit more.
I was at a conference last year in Food Frontier in Melbourne, and one of the things that a speaker brought up, which I think is echoing on the point you are making, anyone remember the big disaster in GM foods? About this ago, right? And what we're seeing now is basically exactly the same problem with GM foods, and now suddenly synthetic biology is a buzzword. So I think it's also about giving consumers time to adapt, giving the food industry time to evolve together with what's happening. And I think that for all of us, there's always a fear of the unknown, and this is the human psyche kicking in. So we just have to stay in the distance in some ways.
I just going to make a comment about the synthetic biology. So I think you have to use metaphors to help educate. If you ask some of the people that are fearful of synthetic biology and you ask them, do you take any vitamins? Well, how are those vitamins made? They're all synthetic biology. And so if you use some metaphors for things that are familiar to them when you're trying to introduce novel things, it generates a little bit more acceptance. One of the buzz phrases that I would always use when I was in industry was, a new product needs to be uniquely familiar. If it's completely novel, it's way too scary. But if there's a bit that's a little bit familiar, then you have a greater chance of acceptance.
I venture to say it has to be a little bit more than just a bit. And my usual formulation is 2 parts truth, 1 part lie. So for those of you who tried the products today, that's kind of roughly what it is. I think, a lassi is very familiar, a snack is very familiar, so the format is not unusual. But what goes into it, most consumers never know. And as long as it tastes good, kind of fulfills the function you think it should, no one's going to ask as to what's in there. It's only because we are at this event, I'm showing this, before I tell you about the protein. We didn't do that. In fact, I think even today, quite a few people ask, when are you bringing this to market? Can I buy this now? And they are purely design concepts.
So I think that on the 2 parts truth, 1 part lie, I think it's a good spot for us to finish. I think that's a learning that we can take maybe in many different scenarios. But one of the things that I think has come out of today and has been aptly wrapped up in today's session has really been about the importance of understanding more about consumer perception, what drives those perceptions, but equally and very importantly, really understanding about how we talk and communicate that, because that's going to have a big influence on the acceptance. And so I think that's one thing that as scientists, we all talk about how do we communicate, we can getting the future of foods further forward. It really is true that the information we consume and how we consume it really does lead into influencing the foods that we eat and what we're putting on our plates. So on that note, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their excellent insights and our speakers for this session, including Luke online. And thank you everyone for a wonderful last session of the day and for sticking out with us. This final session, I'm going to hand back to Zeke to give us a final wrap up. And thank you all for being here.